3, 2.
Okay, welcome. Another Bottle Killer TV. Here we are in the Whisky Library in the Real Bottle Killers Man Cave. I'm your co-host, Michael Roche, and with me, as always, we have the often imitated, never duplicated, the Real Bottle Killer himself. How the hell are you?
Doing good. Excited for today, as always. Looking forward to getting into some drums and getting into the episode. Welcome, folks.
Yeah, good. It seems like a little minute since we've been in the man cave. So let me start by actually you start because it's kind of your idea. The nexus for this idea is yours. So tell me what we're doing today.
Pretty simple. So, one of the things that I said that I wanted to do with the channel, and certainly for my personal experience, is to branch out into different categories of whiskey. So today we're going to have a focus on Indian single malt whiskey. It's an incredibly fast growing market. I think it's a really exciting category of whiskey. They've been doing some great stuff for a while now. And I've picked out 3 really good bottles for us to try today, have a few drams of. And really, it's just about exploration, right? Like one of the things that we love about whiskey is trying new things, going on that journey, taking people on the journey with us. So yeah, trying some Indian single malts today.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, for me, today, it's kind of like the blind leading the blind because, I think it's your first time trying a lot of... If you tried these before, I think you have. You've opened them, right?
I've tried them, yeah.
So for me, it's...
But all of them... These are the first Indian whiskies, really, that I've definitely the first ones that I've bought, pretty much, given a good taste in.
And I just had a look online because I just wanted to really find if we're going to try some Indian whiskies today, expand our sort of horizons, so to speak, then it would be kind of interesting just to know a bit about the market itself. Apparently, it's the most lucrative market in the world, and both there's a huge appetite for Scotch in India, but also there's some huge numbers like in terms of cases that they do with the whiskey that they distill themselves and blend themselves, and there's I think you mentioned to me before there was like whiskey wasn't always considered whiskey in India until a certain point in time, but now they've gone through this kind of like the maturation of any industry. They're kind of now really making some like really high quality single malts.
So what traditionally would have been categorized as whiskey, because they've got different rules, so they use things like molasses, there's less strict rules on the grains and how it's matured. Technically speaking, if it was done in Europe, certainly in Scotland, it'd be categorized as a rum. So I think, when you see some of the stats, you might need to fact check them a little bit. Things like Indian whiskey has outperformed Scotch whiskey for the first time, I think, in 2023. And, it's certainly growing at a fast rate. But what we're talking about today, right, is specifically the category of single malts. And these are, I think, a newer addition to that genre. And particularly exciting and slightly more premium as well.
Yeah, because some of the blends, McDowell's number 1, I think Officers Club is another one, which is their numbers are way higher than say a Johnny Walker's, which is insane when you think about it.
Population of India is huge.
Just the size of
so
the market
big,
itself.
Massive
But
market.
they don't export very much.
No.
Whereas Scotch is like one of the UK's biggest exports. Like in food and drink, I think it might even be like a 1/6 of all exports is Scotch whiskey by itself. It's incredible how big that is to the UK export. So let's waste no time. Let's dive in. Tell me. I'll let you kind of take the lead here, Jay, because I you know way more already than I do about what we're doing today.
So the first single malt here that we've got is from Indri, from the Piccadilly distillery, and this is the 3-wood. So this is a combination of bourbon cask matured whiskey, red wine cask matured whiskey, and PX sherry whiskey. It's bottled at 46%. Not too much more that I can say about that. I think it's a small village at the bottom of the Himalayas. So I mean, I'm just pretty keen to get involved and have a little nose and a little taste of these. See what we think. But I did have a kind of a sneak. I opened this bottle Saturday, and I thought the nose was very impressive. So definitely, it's an absolute delight. The nose. Now, one of the things that I do know about Indian whiskey is the maturation. Obviously, it's a very different climate. So I think if I remember back to the quiz, did we say that Scotch whiskey loses about 2% to the Angel's share? Correct, yeah, good memory, because I definitely got that one wrong on the quiz. With Indian whiskey, because of the climate, depending on where it's matured, you're talking anywhere between 4 and 10% going to the Angels. Now, what that also means is the maturation of the whiskey is also much more rapid. So as you'll see here, and with all of the single malts that you've got today, no age statement. Not necessarily a bad thing, because I think, certainly from a business perspective, if like your whiskey is getting to a level of quality in a much shorter time, I mean, it's great. You can increase the volume of production, but the climate plays a big part. Very similar to Taiwanese whiskey, Kavalan matures at a very fast rate because of the climate, which means that they can get really high quality stuff out at lower ages.
It's kind of interesting because I saw a conversation online. Someone was saying there was a whiskey company in Norfolk, and that even just being that 300 miles or 500 miles south of Scotland will have a difference on the ability to age faster. That slight change in temperature is a little bit warmer in Norfolk than it is in Scotland. So you can only imagine the heat in India and the climate, how that impacts it. I was actually going to ask you, why is there no age statements on the whiskies? But I think that's kind of why, right? Because it's just
you do see
it
some
can work it against it. It work against it. If it says 5 years old, but it's been doing a lot more work in that 5 years, then it works against it on the label.
I think so. Yeah, it's a bit misleading, right? Because like you're saying, someone looks at a sort of 5-year-old whiskey, perhaps sometimes with a bit of whiskey snobbery. Whereas I was reading this morning that leaving it in the barrel too long, a 10-year-old Indian whiskey, it could like really negatively impact the flavour. So I think they try
too
to
much cask in
exactly. Yeah. What are you thinking of this? Because obviously it's got the sherry in the mix. Now I know you're quite a fan of the red wine cask. This being a mixture of the 3 types of wood. Interested to see what you think.
Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit quiet right now because there's a note I'm getting on my nose, and I can't. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't figure it out. So that's why I'm trying to rack my brains and trying to figure out what that is. But there's something that's like hitting me with a memory from something. I'm trying to figure out what that memory is right now.
It's interesting.
But in terms of you've obviously just tasted it. What's your first taste? What's your first impressions?
I find it very fruity. I do get a lot of the wood, so it's got that kind of dryness, that oakiness, the spices. I think in terms of like spices, and I'm not sure if this is what you're picking up, but I get like cardamom, both on the nose and on the palate. But lots of red berries, lots of fruit, kind of a bit of honey.
Very punchy, right? It's got a lot to it. Very rich.
Well, like that again, it goes back to the accelerated maturation, and this is like we're starting with the 46% ABV, and then the other ones are slightly higher. I think one's 50 and one's a cask strength just over. But I think the speed of the maturation really does give you more of those punchy flavors, and letting it settle in the glass, I think you'll find it can be quite complex as well.
Yeah, I wasn't quite ready for this. It's like coming out first round.
Yeah, and we didn't even have a warm-up dram today like we usually do, just to get the palates going. So we are literally like diving straight in.
He's like, his first round came out and he's put it straight on me. I'm against the ropes. It's a big first round.
But it is punchy, but I like it. And
it's got a real on the end, it's kind of like a very smooth and long finish, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like kind of like a hallmark of a really well-made whiskey is that end that you have. What do you call that? So you have the nose, you have the palate. What do they call the finish?
Finish.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
5 senses. I mean, there's not too much information here on the tasting notes. As I say, bourbon cask, French wine cask, PX sherry. Like I say, I pick up a lot of that fruit, but I quite like that as well. That it's down to you to pick out the flavors and sort of really explore the whiskey. Because sometimes you'll see something, a really obscure note on the label of a whiskey, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I can really taste that whatever it is, like Tutti Frutti bubblegum or something, like, oh yeah, I'm really picking it up, but you're like, is it just the power of suggestion?
Do you know? I really do think it's a real thing. Which is, I'm not a big wine drinker, at all. Really, I'm a bit of a more of a beer monster and a whiskey drinker. But every time I have the red wine casks, I can pick out the flavors, and that's probably what I'm enjoying most in this. Is the dryness and the red wine fruitiness that is making this so great.
And I think there is a combination of like the tannins from the red wine, but also the tannins from the cask as well, giving it that dryness in the finish. I mean, I'm quite a fan of that. I think, you know, you are as well. But I'm impressed. I think it's a really solid introduction to Indian whiskey. Indri 3-wood.
That's a delight. That's a really great whiskey. At first, I was a little bit like, it was a little bit too much of a punch and a slap in the chops. But as I've adapted and warmed up, that's an absolute delight. Indri.
It could also, you know, that first sip or two could be suffering from the fact that, like, we didn't warm our palates up today.
True.
I think if you tried this up, if you'd have, I actually got a bottle of Ballantine's 17-year-old yesterday, and that's a great sort of warm-up dram. It's like 40%, super smooth. Like, it's a good one to start a tasting with, and it opens up the palate. I think if we'd have started with that, like, you'd dive straight into this and you'd be like even more blown away. But I think it's a really impressive dram.
Oh, it's great. I think it's really good.
So,
really good.
Shall we keep things moving?
Like 5 once sank. Keep it moving.
Keeping it on fire. So the next one that we've got is the Paul John Classic Select Cask, if you can see that. Now, this is I believe it's a cask strength whiskey. It's bottled at 55.2%, and this is from a white oak bourbon barrel. So moving in a slightly different direction with this one, purely bourbon maturation. It's not a mix of casks. It's also a lot stronger, so we'll be expecting a few, you know, more punchy flavors. Maybe it needs some water. We can always play around with that. And it's the highest ABV of the 3 that I've got, but the one that I left to last is peated, so I figured we'll go start with the lowest ABV, we'll go to the cask strength bourbon cask, and then we'll round things off with the peated one.
Good, interesting. It's good. I'm glad we're going unpeated for 2 of them, because, you know, we were out last night, we had a couple of drams, and we went quite like heavy peated whiskies, and they weren't quite doing it for me in the way that they used to. So I'm excited for the unpeated.
We're
trying unpeated rather than peated.
No, I'm sure the Glengarry wasn't peated. I'm sure that was just the Adelphi Glengarry was just a bourbon cask, but it was strong. It was 59.2%. So yeah. I mean, this straight away to me is a completely different profile. Way more caramel, way more vanilla, as you'd expect. It's actually quite smooth, even though it's 55.2%. Like, I'm not getting any burn, like no nose prickle from the alcohol. I actually had my nose waxed this morning as well.
Do you get your nose waxed?
Yeah, the barber just like shoves these like cotton buds up there with some wax on, and then it's like. Poof.
I got so much stuff growing in there. It's like it's a one of those like hallmarks of, you know, you're getting old, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if it helps with like the nose in getting more notes, like get those old man hairs out the way and take more flavors in.
Did the nose hairs have like purpose, don't they, or they just like?
I think they just stop like space? When you like breathing in, getting all like dirt and shit in your nose, but. Yeah. Who knows? Excuse the pun.
Again, you may as well fire me from the Bottle Killer TV, because it really is I've got another nose that I'm getting that I can't put my finger on and taste. This is the worst episode for me yet. Oh, I can smell something, but I can't tell you what it is.
You're not primed yet. You're not primed for it. Can you think like what kind of category? Like, would it be a woody kind of note? Would it be a spicy note? Is it a fruity note? Is it earthy? Like, you know, if you can't necessarily pinpoint exactly what the the note is.
Well, this is very just jump in straight onto the taste, just so we don't spend too much time on my inability to
nose the whiskey.
nose the whiskey. It's fantastic. This is everything you'd expect from a bourbon cask. You know, it's got that vanilla-y, it's got that oaky, it's got that. It's absolutely beautiful.
What I'm finding with this one, and we've been drinking, you know, we've kind of gone back to really appreciating just classic bourbon oak matured whiskies, you know.
Yeah.
It is, for me, it's slightly darker. You know, you get a lot of the bourbon cask matured whiskey is quite light, and this is darker.
Do you think that's colouring?
That's a possibility, actually, yeah, because it is possible that there's colouring in it. I'm not sure why, because I don't know why you would want to put colouring in a bourbon cask whiskey. To me, it does make sense. Maybe in a sherry cask one to make it look darker, so that people think like, oh, you know.
But I think it's just the thing. People see a straw whiskey and think, oh, it doesn't look as pretty as a sherried whiskey.
Possible. Have a little look on the bottle if it says anything about caramel colour. But it's rich, right? You know, and obviously you'd expect that because it's a cask strength. But just a lovely full mouthfeel. Again, getting some of that dryness, that kind of spice and tannins coming through just on the back end of the palate there.
There's a memory. Damn, it's unlocking, but I can't. It's not unlocking it to me. It's just unlocking it to my nose.
Somewhere deep in the depths. So
it's a little bit of deja vu. That's what it is. It's just giving me a deja vu for something.
What do you think of the glasses as well? I got these new glasses. Like, they were supposed to be Copperton glasses, but we were drinking out of Coppertons last night, and they were way more robust than this. I feel like this is like literally going to snap in my hand.
I think they're doing a job, and the one thing we know is that, you know, I'm kind of like I'm still in my sort of like Ed Norton Fight Club phase, where, you know, like I want to have like the perfect glasses in the kitchen. You like 2 Guinness 440, 2 Guinness pint-sized glasses, you know, 6 Capitas of Boona Harbin, 2 nice Jack Daniel. But I always smash glasses so often. They always get knocked over, knocked on the floor, smashed, and then you have 5, not 6.
Oh,
and it bumps you out. So, you know, as long as it does a job, I'm getting around to the phase of.
I had these really nice, they're like hand blown from an Australian company called Denver and Lily. And they're like hand blown, like vase glasses, really big. And I was like, obviously, like pissed one night listening to Return of the Mac. I did some like crazy move, and it just like flew out my hand and like smashed into the door. I was like, no, they're like £35 for a glass. And I was just
put
like,
out the big move,
absolutely devastated. I got these ones; they weren't too expensive, so I don't mind if they get smashed, but don't smash them.
We had the one that's the heaviest in the heart is we came home from Scotland with some like really great Deanston warehouse number 2 Capitas, and none of them exist anymore.
Oh no, the train ride home. They didn't even survive the train ride home.
We won't talk about that.
But just to keep things moving, the third and final whiskey that we've got today, this is Amrut Fusion. Interesting about this is that whilst it's an Indian whiskey, it was actually launched in Glasgow round about the mid-90s, if I'm not mistaken. And this is called Fusion. Fusion is because it's a mix of Indian barley and Scottish peated barley. So this is our smoky whiskey. It's bottled at 50%, and it's peated, so we've left this one till last. And yeah, I think we've had a good selection, because we've had like a sherry wine cask, you know, a bit of a mix. We've had a cask strength bourbon cask, and now we're going to dive in and try this peated one. So there we go.
But we never actually said Paul John. Paul John, firstly, is that's an absolute buy. Oh, we I don't know if we're going to buys yet, but maybe we'll do that at the end. But it said I'm blown away by how good that second. The first one was great, and I loved the red wine influence of that. But this is so good.
Yeah, I'm
blown away. I'm truly blown away by like how good that is. It's just
tickling the taste buds.
It's just a classic bourbon oak cask.
Yeah, I do. I think I agree. But maybe not with the classic. I think it is different to a Scotch bourbon oak. Like I was drinking the Lindor's bourbon cask yesterday, again, more straw coloured. Okay, it's a lowland whiskey, and perhaps, it is a bit lighter, a bit fresher, more of those kind of floral notes. That one for me is heavier, richer. It's more caramelly. It's more of that viscosity that we talk about that we like. And, I think it's an incredible whiskey. I do agree with you. But I think like that's the beauty of it, is that to me it's very different to a Scotch bourbon cask.
That's what I love. I love the newness. And quite often when it comes to I need to be led a little bit. That's why I like age statements, whether it's 10 years old, 12-year-olds, 18-year-olds. It gives you a little pointer in the right direction of what it is and where it's going and where you should go with it. With that, it's kind of like it's a mystery, right? There's no age statement on it.
Nope.
But there's a newness which is like really interesting and enjoyable about it. Yeah,
Definitely.
It's an absolute buy.
All part of the experience, part of the journey.
All part of the journey.
Okay. So, Amrut, what are we getting here?
Can't tell you, mate. Deja vu again. Joking. Let me know it.
There's something there, but I don't know what it is.
It's a memory locked.
I think it's quite nutty, this one, on the nose.
It is nice.
It's nutty.
I'll agree with you, since I'm coming up with nothing.
Drawing a blank. What about the peat, though? This is peated, remember, peated barley, a mixture. How's that smokiness coming through on the nose there? And
not that powerful.
No,
Not even there,
agree.
if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, if at all, like it's super mild.
No, I'm getting more of the sweetness.
Sweet,
More of the sweetness than the peatness.
milk chocolate.
Sweet, not peat.
Yeah, sweet milk chocolate, nutty.
Yeah, milk chocolate is a good call.
Yeah, definitely.
I like when you give me the notes to like smell, because then I can pick them
I
up.
can smell that. Yeah,
No, or at least I can pretend I do, and then you'll not know.
makes me feel good as well. Appreciate that.
No, the milk chocolate, I'm getting like it is like a little dairy milk packed in there.
It's nice. Difference.
So it's Amrut. So this is one that we straight away you get the smoke actually. So hides in the nose, and then it's like a Trojan horse. It comes in, and as soon as it's in the gates, pow, here I am. Hello,
Pow.
It's like Ross on Friends, like I'm still alive. It's like hello, I am peated. That's great.
It's just kind of comes out of nowhere, doesn't it? Because it's like barely there on the nose. And I don't know, other than the peatiness, I don't know too much about the cask makeup on this one, but I feel like it's got sherry in it, sherry in the mix somewhere, because it's got that dry fruitiness, dried fruits. What's interesting is I find actually the palate completely different to the nose, which is rare. Sometimes, like usually you'll get the nose leads into some common crossover into the palate, but I think this is completely different. Like sweet, nutty, milk chocolate on the nose, and into dried fruits and smoky kind of earthy peat on the palate, and then spiciness coming through in the finish as well. Little bit of a kind of gingery kind of tongue tingle on the finish, peppery ginger.
And this is that's why it's such a Trojan horse, because the nose and the mouth is kind of different. So if you want an experience, if you want a literal like 15-second, 30-second journey, then that's kind of like pow, that's it. Fusion. Did you say that this is half Scotch, half Indian single malt, right? Is that the fusion? That's why it's called Amrut Fusion.
I think it's the barley. So I was initially a little bit confused on that as well, because I was like, yeah, but because I know who is it, like Suntory. I think a lot of people use like Ben Nevis distillate or Ben Nevis whiskey in some of their like Japanese stuff or whatever. I've come across that before, so I didn't know if it was something similar, but then surely it would be categorized as a blend. So what I think the fusion is the fusion between the unpeated homegrown Indian barley, and they ship over, or they maybe not even ship over, because if they were in Glasgow they don't need to, right? They also use Scottish barley, but because it's only then producing the distillate, There's no blending involved. See what I'm saying? So it's the fusion is the mixture of the grains, and it's still a single malt whiskey. But if anybody else knows otherwise, please do let us know, because like we say, we're we're learning as we go with the Indian whiskey here.
So it's got a very muted. If that's a sherry finish, it's a very muted finish.
Don't quote me on that. I'm just kind of that's
Well, it's
me
almost
guessing.
got that dryness of
I
like a
do
wine
think
cask,
so, yeah.
of like a wine cask, and so, but it's not really giving me like the full wine cask. So it's I'm leaning more towards the sherried.
I think definitely. I think it's I think the sherry.
You can see
It'd be pretty. I reckon it'd be pretty easy to find out.
But you can see, it's kind of got the smoke punchiness of the sherry, but then the dryness. It's got this like dry finish.
Yeah.
That's the confusion in it.
Confusion with the Amrut Fusion.
Oh, good. Pun, the highest form of wit.
Dude, that's Bon Jovi.
That was a quote of Life off the Road. Sarcasm, highest form of puns, highest form of comedy.
Where are we going now? what are we doing here? But yeah, I think pulling it back to the whiskey, another good dram, and I like that the way that like the peat kind of sneaks up on you, sneaky peat.
Sneaky Pete, indeed. It's This is good. So are we gonna rank them? Are we gonna say each one's a buy, or what do we do?
That was my intention. I think in their own ways. I mean, I can ask you the question. So, Indri 3-wood, is it a buy?
Oh, this is light. Yeah.
A buy?
Yeah.
I mean, we already kind of know, right? Paul John Classic Select, is it a buy?
Oh, that's a buy.
And Amrut Fusion.
It's a buy.
So we got 3 buys, like 3, I think, very good whiskies, very impressive whiskies, all very different. But I think like the best thing that we can do is, call like, what's your top whiskey of the 3? And I think I know mine.
Yeah. Well, what's kind of interesting is I don't know what I was expecting today.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I was. I don't like. From the ones that I've tried, I don't like drinking bourbon straight.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It's like, I'd rather be drinking Scotch, and I don't know if I was expecting some like different substance, almost expecting to drink like a different type of alcohol today. But actually, what I've drunk is really high quality whiskey, and I don't know that maybe that shouldn't have been surprising, but it actually has been surprising that these are like these are ones that like if you were on a you were around with your friends and enjoying, you're just having great whiskey, great, really, really well made, bodied, great whiskey.
That's the thing, because like we were talking last night about the Liverpool Whiskey Club, and they do like a bottle share night where you take your own bottle and you take. These are the kinds of things that I take to a bottle share for people, because it's like maybe they've not tried Indian whiskey yet, and it's like I want to give them an experience of something new, but also like I don't want to give them a bottle of Hay Club. I want to give them something that they're actually going to enjoy. So any of these, like, these are the kind of things I'd be sharing with people.
Yeah, it's a great exploration, and it's also like a, like I said before, like the reason Scotch is always going to be the number one on the wall is because the accessibility, right? Yep. It's like we're lucky in the world where sometimes in America I've been to off licenses where my dad lives in Chicago, and you're just lucky what's there, and they have like a good selection. But you're lucky what that selection is. You might find stuff you would never find in the UK because it's just one buyer at a big off license, and they have these big off licenses which are like a block, a big warehouse, right? And they have so many wines, but it's just random what they buy. They may buy Deanston 18 in droves because the buyer knows about it, and so it's kind of a bit more random. Whereas Scotch is always going to be the go-to because you understand that we have the accessibility that nowhere else in the world has, which is kind of lucky. It's but when it comes to exploring outside of our little bubble, then it's going to be fascinating all the different people that have the passion for whiskey have the passion for Scotch, and I think the what these are built off people's passion for Scotch. These are not people doing a different whiskey in a different way.
Yeah.
These are built off. We love Scotch, but we've got a passion. We'd like to make our own.
Yeah, it's premium, right? It's single malts. Like going back to one of the original points about the whiskey, it would be categorized as rum here. It's cheap. It's not high quality. The reason for that was there just wasn't the demand for it, but the demand has obviously increased and the expectations have increased. And I think like very similar to Japanese whiskey, like 10, 15 years ago, where it was largely based on Scotch whiskey and the distillation process. I think they're going down a very similar path, and I think there's a lot of exciting things to come. But I reckon we round this off. I'm going to ask you what your top of the three, or you can rank them, 1, 2, 3. I'll do the same, and then I think we round off the episode and close out on Indian whiskey for today.
Yeah, so it's kind of easy. Paul John is number 1. Indri, number 2, and Amrut would be number 3.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I would go different. I don't know if it is just because I like the smokiness, but I would put Amrut number 1.
Wow. Okay.
I like that. I think it's smooth, smoky. It's complex. It's got layers to it. Love the Paul John. Excellent stuff. And third place, I'd put the Indri. So
interesting.
Slightly different.
Did you add water to your Amrut?
I didn't add water to any of them. No, but like I didn't think they needed it. That's why.
No, they didn't.
I don't think there's any.
And that's a hallmark of quality.
Yeah.
Maybe because I didn't see as much complexity in the Amrut. I'm just thinking now, if there was water or we left it for a bit longer, maybe I can get on the same page with that. So maybe this is a come back to and see what we can do with it. Because I didn't quite get the complexity. So that's usually put some water, leave it a little bit longer, have a bigger glass.
Next time we'll do it. We'll have a Ballantine's or something similar first, and then we'll like leave it for a bit. We'll pour a glass. We'll give it like half an hour. We'll let that settle, and then we'll try that.
But again, that's like nothing else in terms of the Trojan horse that it was. In terms of it hid the smoke in there. Like, how do you do that?
Where did it come from?
Hello, surprise. Surprise! Who knows? That's it's kind of a crazy one. But that's fascinating that you went that top, and interesting. You put that number 2.
Yeah.
So we weren't totally, but that's we've been on quite a few whiskey tours, and they usually give you 3 or 4. And when it's 3 and they ask you to rank them, we quite often are not the same when it comes to the 3 that we pick, which is good because it keeps it fresh, and it knows that there's no cheating. We're not just agreeing with each other, which is good. But now I'm interested to actually dive into a bit more of this and try and understand what it is that you're understanding about it. But regardless, it's really it's like the top 3, but it's like picking if you asked you what's your favorite kid, do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean you don't like one.
No comment. Anyway.
Well, on that bad parenting note, we will say goodbye and see you later. We won't actually. We will. What's next? What's next on Bottle Killer TV? What can we?
So what we got in the pipeline, we're going to be doing a Deanston 18-year-old review with a twist. If you're interested in finding out more about that, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button so you get the upcoming episodes. And I think we'll take them out on Indian whiskey. But, definitely a strong endorsement from both of our sides here.